Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone. Yes, we are live. Thank you so much for joining us for the Eight Queens Roundtable Show and Podcast. I am your host, 𝐐𝐮𝐞𝐞𝐧'𝐬 Harrison. And again, we typically stream on Sundays, every second and fourth Sunday of the month. But I have been mentioning to you guys that I'm doing a few things differently. So I'm adding additional shows. And one of the things that I'm doing now is I'm actually interviewing some of the awesome co-authors from the Undefeated anthology, which the visionary author is Kearn. Yes, the one and only butts in the seats queen, the host of the Success Conference, Power Up, one of the hosts of Level Up. This is actually her new anthology that is coming out, and we're going to be talking about it because I have one of her esteemed co-authors with us today. So again, let me just share a little bit about myself. I am, yes, the host of the Eight Queens Roundtable Show and Podcast, also your host for the Eight Queens Roundtable Leadership Symposium, which happens in January, May, and September. I am also a visionary author myself. My new book anthology is titled Born to Lead, Awakening the Leader Within, which is also coming out towards the end of September. So stay tuned for that. And definitely last but not least, I am the executive producer of the Eight Queens Roundtable channel on the one and only Women Win Network, which streams on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. So again, I am super excited to be here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to let Miss Nicholette Hemingway start. She's going to go ahead and basically introduce herself. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good evening, Jackie, and thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about the anthology that I'm one of the co-authors with fabulous Kearn. My name is Nicholette Hemingway, and I am a native of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I currently reside in the metro area of Columbia, South Carolina. I am a Proverbs 31 wife of over 35 years to my handsome husband. We're the parents of one beautiful daughter and grandparents to an adorable grandson, Michael. So I'm delighted to be here. I am third generation military. My grandfather and father retired from the Air Force, and I retired from a branch you've probably never heard of called the U.S. Public Health Service. And the best way I describe it is the U.S. Surgeon General was my boss. And so I did my service also to my country. And I'm just, excited to share some of the projects I've been working on and, ready to let people know, more about Nicholette Hemingway.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. Welcome to the
Thank
show.
you.
So glad you were actually here with us. And say it one more time, the branch that you were, the branch in which you serve, what's it called again?
It's called the U.S. Public Health Service.
U.S. Public Health Service. Okay, all right. You know what, I'm telling you, I learn something different every time I do this show. So what exactly is that? Like what were you responsible for?
Sure. The U.S. Public Health Service, we're all commissioned officers. We have the same rank as the Navy, much of the same uniforms, just different insignia. And we were all public health professionals. So, for instance, I am a health administrator by training. And in reality, I was a paper pusher. I did a lot of policy writing, document writing, white papers. So we're different specialties. Like we have some doctors where we're assigned to a lot of the federal agencies like CDC, NIH, Bureau of Prisons, Food and Drug Administration, just to name a few.
Okay. Wow. Awesome. So let's lead into, well, you know what, even before we lead into that, because of course, I want you to talk about why you decided to become a part of this awesome book anthology. But before we go into that, what is the name of your because we don't, actually, I'm going to take this down just for a minute so they can see your website and so forth. But what is the name of your business?
The name of my business is 𝐐𝐞 Speaks, and my business does career coaching. We also do interview preparation training, as well as resume writing tips training, job search tools trainings, and we also do resume writing, cover letter writing, any kind of document or letter writing.
Okay. So why that? How did that come about?
This came about by my own journey. When I was in college, I was, one of those seniors who thought when I graduated, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to right all the wrongs with this magic wand. And I interviewed for a job with a bank. And a few days later, the lady called me and told me I didn't get the job. She also told me that I was dressed appropriately, but I had problems answering some of the interview questions. So that led to me on a quest to go to the library, because the World Wide Web wasn't out when I was in college. So I was looking at books on how to interview, how to answer common interview questions, how to write a resume that would, let me stand out from the crowd. And so that started my journey. And it happened to where I was doing resumes and helping people prep for interview, friends, family, coworkers, and people were referring me, to other people they knew. And so this personal hobby actually turned into a business a couple of years ago. So, God was like, you need to do this as a business. And I gave that Scooby-Doo look like, and he was like, no, this is a business. Because Jackie, I'm sure you and I are part of the generation where our parents told us to get you that good government job, get your name on the shirt and do your 30 years, get your watch or your gold pen and get your pension. They never told us about being entrepreneurs, having our own business. And so for me, that was a strange concept. And, I slowly got into the rhythm, and, it's pretty good now. I understand, being your own boss, you have to put in the work. You have to, connect with people. So it's been a very interesting journey.
Oh my God. Yes. And it's so funny to hear you say that, because you're right. That's, as I was growing up, that's all I heard was, go to school, get a good education and get a good job. And I currently live in Michigan, born and raised here. And of course, Ford, Chrysler, GM, all of the big car producing companies, right? So that was what it was. A lot of people, a lot of African Americans migrated up from the South to places like Ohio and Chicago and what's the other one, Indianapolis, right? So they could actually get these jobs in the factories, right? That would allow them to be able to purchase homes and purchase cars and put their kids, such as myself, through college. So that was what it was you go to work, you be on time, you give it all you got, you do your 30 years, 40 years, however long, and take your little pen or whatever they give you when you get ready to retire, and you're good. That's just the way it was. That's just what we could expect. But I think, and especially when all of those kind of flopped, here in Michigan, it was a totally new ball game, So, and I'm kind of going back. I know a lot of times we talk about COVID, and that's another situation in itself, right? Where people's worlds were kind of turned upside down. Things that we had grown to think that we can depend on, like a pension. And I have to say that, y'all, do my little air quotes, because I've been out there in the, what do you call it, like looking for jobs and things of that nature just about a year ago, the most recent. And the whole idea of a pension is like, when you start talking pension, it's almost like remember on Charlie Brown when they would talk, when the parents would talk and all you heard was womp womp. When you start saying pension, they like, look, what are you talking about? So this is a totally new world. And I'm not the most tech savvy person, but I had to get out there. all businesses, for the most part now, have to have some sort of an online presence, and people have to think outside the box. So, let me ask you that. Now, your business, is it, I would assume you meet with clients face-to-face, like in person, as well as online. Yes?
For the most part, because COVID has changed things, it's pretty much online. I do, a Zoom meeting with all, clients online to get a feel for what their needs are, what they're looking for, what they're expecting. And, we map out a plan of, how my company will deliver that service, that product to them. So pretty much it's face-to-face in terms of virtual. The face-to-face, meeting in my home has pretty much been eliminated because of COVID.
Okay. Wow. So see, you had to adjust.
Yes, and it's also
And
good because, some of my clients are all over the country, as far as California, not just locally here in South Carolina, some Mississippi, even, New York. So it's actually helped my business in terms of having to be more visible online. I've reached new clients that I probably never would have.
yeah, I'm sure you do. Probably even abroad too, right?
I am working on that. I am working on being international.
There you go. Well, you know what? Okay, so let's segue into, because I know Kearn has had numerous other, I don't know how many exactly, but numerous other book projects that have made #1 bestsellers. So let's talk a little bit about why is this your first project? And have you authored a book before? And why this particular project?
This is not my first project in terms of an anthology, but Kearn is such a dynamic visionary. She can see things and she can put things together where it really is life-changing for those who are involved in it and for those who participate, whether you're a reader or you attend one of her conferences. And so when she approached me about doing this anthology, I said, well, Kearn, let me think about it. Let me pray about it. And I'll get back to you, because I was like, undefeated, how am I undefeated? And so it just came through a process of, God saying, well, this is how you're undefeated. And I was like, oh, really? And so I went back to her and said, yes, I'll be happy to do it, because you have to think about your life and what's going on. And you look at your circumstances sometimes or your situation and you think, well, life has defeated me. I'm not undefeated in anything. And then God has to remind you of, what he's brought you through. And then that's where you get the, inspiration, the, drive to say, okay, well, let me put this story out here. Let me give people a glimpse of, how I'm undefeated in this area.
Okay. So when you think of, well, before I ask that, you stated that this is your first anthology project?
No, this should be my third or fourth anthology project.
Your third or fourth. Okay. And then did you say that you've authored a book by yourself?
Yes, I've also authored 3 books by myself. Currently, I'm promoting my book called Little Black Girl from the Beach, A Wake-Up Call from God. And it's a faith-based, fictionalized story of Nicholette and her journey of childhood trauma and a handicap, friendship issues, and trying to balance, school, family, career, life balance, and her downward spiral with drugs and how she gave her life to Christ in a hotel room.
Wow, that's a pretty big accomplishment. I mean, being in the armed forces and you this is your book project, and you've authored some other books. This is your several, under your belt book anthology projects. That's awesome. So you love to write.
I don't know if I love to write so much that God has given me the grace to write. A lot of my career was based on writing documents, drafting policies, Federal Register notices, white papers, talking points for like the director, just a lot of correspondence. So God gave me that grace to write. And my daughter, who is like my biggest cheerleader, has been telling me for years, Ma, you need to write your story. And I'm like, my life is so boring. Who wants to hear about it? And so other friends were like, you should put this in a book. People won't believe it. And so it just got to the point where, okay, let me just put pen to paper and, see what happens. And so this is what has evolved just over the last few years.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And part of this show is, or some of the reasons that I started this show, is to be able to give inspiration to others, because I hear that a lot. And I even thought of it as far as myself. Like, I don't have anything to share with anybody, or who wants to hear my story? Why would this be important to anyone? And the thing of it is, there are so many people out there that you aren't even aware of that will be impacted by your story, or even just hearing this video, whether they're listening to it live, whether they catch the replay, whether they go on YouTube and see it, I don't know, next year. You know what I mean? That could be the little, how they say, maybe the last straw, if you will, for them to make that decision to actually move forward with it. Well, you know what? Yeah, so-and-so told me, my pastor told me 3 years ago, that I should write a book or I should tell my story. And I kind of brushed it off or laughed it off. But, I read about this young lady, and she told her story, and she didn't feel like she had anything to say, anything worth saying. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot, give it a try. And then when we as women do that, it's like we at that point, we began to write our own stories. We began to take control. We began to feel more empowered in terms of actually creating our own lives, or creating our own futures in the things that we feel are important for us. So it's more about, it's more than just a book. I mean, it could be inspiration to someone. It could actually make someone decide to stop using drugs and to turn their life around, give their life over to Christ, and walk in their purpose. It could make the difference in someone deciding to leave an abusive relationship. It could make the difference in someone maybe leaving a corporate job, and nothing wrong with the corporate jobs, leaving a corporate job where they're working, I don't know, 65, 70 hours a week, and got an ulcer, and, can't have sleep at night because they're so stressed out. It could be the difference from them moving from that, or having the courage to move from that into doing something that feeds their soul. So these stories, our stories matter. And how many women are part of this project? Do you know?
I'm not sure how many are part of the project, Jackie, but you're so right in terms of telling your story. I tell people, everybody has a story to tell. Your story is unique to you, and it may help someone who's in a similar situation or circumstance to know that, hey, I can overcome this as well. If she went through it and she came out okay, well, I'm going to be okay too. And nobody can tell your story like you can tell your story. I don't care what it is. You and I may have both grown up in, let's say, a emotionally abusive childhood, but your story is unique to you. Your emotional abuse could be, something as far as your looks, where mine could have been my weight. So we still have the same story, but there are different nuances to our story. And so that's what makes it unique to you. And again, nobody can tell your story better than you can.
That's right. And our story has shaped us. You and I could come from a very similar, I'm not gonna say identical, or it could be two siblings growing up in the same home.
Yes.
Under the same, parents and same family, and have two totally different perspectives, and the way that they have responded to it, or the way they have adapted to it, or,
Exactly.
so on and so forth. So your story is unique. I know I used to get really caught up in, my story isn't as important as this person's story because, I didn't survive maybe domestic, abuse, or I wasn't abused as a child, physically. But the abuse that I suffered was verbal abuse. and for me, that was just as impactful on me. It basically changed the whole course of my life. I didn't even realize it initially. That weight that I walked around with, that was just kind of like, have you ever seen those commercials about depression? The way they say people that have depression, they walk around, it's like this cloud that follows them everywhere. Like, that's how I was. And at the time when I had the cloud, so to speak, I didn't realize I had the cloud until I got from under the cloud. And I was like, wow, and of course, I can't waste my time on spilled milk. I can't say, oh, well, if I had known what I know now 30 years ago, or 25 years ago, maybe, who knows where I would be now. However, what I do have control over is today, and how I think today and how I plan to move forward. That's what I have control over. So that's what I focus on. So, wow, this is, I love doing this. I love talking to different women and just basically finding out a little bit about the individuals that are participating in the project and why they feel that it's important to them. So I know you're not going to give away everything. I know that, but is it possible just to maybe tell just a little bit, I guess, just to kind of get the curiosity going about your particular chapter in the book?
Sure. My particular chapter deals with something I believe a lot of us have went through growing up, which is dealing with a childhood trauma. And I'm not going to go into exactly what it is, but we're in positions, and especially I think folks are around our age, Jackie, where we grew up under the auspices of, what go on in the house, stay in the house, and you better not tell folks our business. And so growing up in that culture, you didn't tell things, you didn't share things with your parents that, nowadays, our kids will sing from the rooftops. It was kept a secret, whether you were threatened or, made to feel threatened. We didn't talk about those things. And so a lot of things, we, hold on to, we suppress, and it, manifests later on in our lives where it causes things like depression or suicidal thoughts, or you go another path with drugs and alcohol. And so that's pretty much a story that I'm telling. It's fictionalized because I didn't want to, have folks call me back. I'm Nike, you talking about me, I'm gonna sue you. So it's fictionalized, but it's, something that did happen in my childhood, and where, I didn't let it defeat me. I actually conquered it. And so that's what I want people to realize, that yes, this happened to me. This was terrible, but I didn't let it hold me back. I became undefeated because I conquered that. And it has turned me into a person that is, an author, a small business owner, someone who will talk about it. I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to talk about, a childhood trauma, and that, yes, this happened to me, but I know I'm not the only one. And don't let this define you as a person. You are loved, you are supported. If nothing else, God cares for you, and he's crafted, a path for you that is unique to you. So that's why I wanted to share that little piece of my story.
Wow, that is so powerful. I know, when is the book set? The book is set to launch. It's this month though, right?
Yes, I want to say around the 23rd or 24th of this month. I'm not exactly sure, but we are set to launch in a couple of weeks.
Okay, wow, that's exciting. It's beautiful, beautiful. I was going to ask you, what advantages would you say there are to being a part of an anthology, like being a co-author in an anthology?
You get to meet, other dynamic people, whether, some of the groups I've written in are groups of women, and you get to, bond with them. You get to hear some of their story of, what made them who they are today. And it's just amazing to hear about that, conquering spirit, the person who is, okay, this happened to me. It was tragic, but I have defeated it. It has not defeated me. And it, puts you in a company of people who are resilient, who are overcomers, who are ones who aren't afraid or ashamed to tell their story. Where, like you were saying, Jackie, 25 or 30 years ago, you couldn't have gotten this out of me no matter what you said. You could have offered me millions of dollars. You couldn't have pried the story out of the depths of my soul. There's no way. But now, people have been liberated to tell their story because they are not by themselves. The more you tell it, the more you're freeing yourself and you're giving other people keys to freedom as well.
Yep, absolutely. And I like how you said the more you tell it, you're freeing yourself. And I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is when we talk about forgiveness. This is a whole nother path, but I'm using it to kind of compare with you saying that when you tell your story, it helps you to grow as well as helps others. I know it is challenging to break out of that mindset because you're right. I did grow up in that era. Whatever happens in this house stays in that house. I mean, and it's interesting because even when my mom is deceased, and even when I talk to her younger sister, her baby sister, as a matter of fact, because actually all of my mother's siblings are deceased because it was 5 of them. So it's just one of them left. So it's my mom's baby sister. And when I talk to her about different things in my childhood, she'll say something like, "Oh, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that." So again, and my mother was an identical twin. And I even talked to because my mom passed first. And then some years later, her identical twin, my aunt, passed. And I remember talking with my aunt, and it was things that I just knew she knew. But talking, she didn't know anything. So I'm saying all that to say, or my point with that is even her twin sister didn't even know some of the things that were going on in the household. So that is real. What happens in this house stays in this house. And also when you bring in the church as well, like I've interviewed a lot of women, and it's come up many, many times about different things that happen in the church and how that's kind of like maybe a double taboo, if you will. No one wants to talk about it. Everyone is so eager, if you will, to push it underneath the rug, and and just things of that nature. So I think it's important to also mention that not only is your story important, and not only will that help others to heal, but lastly, and not least, but it will help you to heal. And like you said, it's not about putting people on blast or anything of that nature, but it's about telling your story. Like making it a part of you, because you are who you are because of the things that you went through that has helped to build your character and to make you the person you are today. So to me, I mean, there's no reason not to do it. And actually, I don't know why I had never done it before. You know what I mean? Now I'm like, listen, I'm on a roll now. Because I think it's awesome. And then, one other thing, and then because I know you probably got something else you want to add, but I'm not a writer. Okay, I wrote papers in school because I had to. I did a thesis because they said you're not going to graduate until you do this thesis. Okay, you know what I mean? But writing has never been something I'm like, oh, I can't wait to sit down and do some writing. Like I've never, you know what I mean? But it's awesome at the fact that you can, like you said, come together with other women and like form a unity and do some networking, and everybody's story coming together. Everyone, gives a little portion or a little piece. So it's not very overwhelming. So I'm saying all that to say, for those of you out there say, well, I don't do no writing, or I don't know how to write, or I don't like writing, whatever the case is, writing a few pages, or, I don't know, maybe a page and a half or 3 pages, 5 pages, whatever. So don't shy away from it. If you're thinking about being a part of an anthology project, it's all thumbs up. I think it's all good things that can come from being a part of a project, anthology project.
You're so right, Jackie. And normally with the anthology projects, you're only writing so many words. It could be 1,000 words. It could be 3,000 words. So it really is a little snippet, of your story that you're telling. And it can also give you the encouragement or the inspiration to, write your whole book. And so, being a part of an anthology is an awesome experience. I definitely enjoy doing those because I can just put a little piece out there. And I know one thing I realized in writing my own book was you have to push past the pain. And I know it took me a few years to actually write my first book because I would get to a painful part and I would put the book aside for a few months. Then I would pull it out again and write some more, get to another painful part, put it back. And it just had to get to a point where, a couple of years ago, God was like, you're editing so-and-so's book. You need to finish your own. I was like, ooh, okay. So, I finished editing her book so quick. And then it took me 2 weeks to finish my own. So for a lot of us, it's a painful process, but I encourage you to push through the pain because I say my pain is your purpose. My pain could be your purpose to get out of that broken relationship, to finish your degree, to start your own business. And so, it's a purpose for your pain. It's not just for you. Yes, that pain is going to mold and shape you, but also it's going to give someone else their purpose to, write a book or be a business owner.
Ooh, yes, that is so true. And I'm not there yet in terms of writing my own book. So when I said I'm on a roll, I meant like doing more anthologies or being a part of more anthologies. I'm not ready. I don't think I'm quite ready to cross that bridge yet in terms of writing my own, but I will someday.
Right.
So I'm telling you, once I got out of college, and yes, it has been a while, but I said, listen, I'm not writing nothing else.
I understand. I know, because especially, if you go to grad school, that's all you do is like write papers. And I remember me and my friend, we talked about, it's like, oh gosh, if we have to write another paper, our hands are going to fall off. But it's something, and I said, I just fell into it. That just happened to be my career, a lot of writing. And so it wasn't so much that I enjoyed it. I just had the gift, the talent to be able to write stuff. And so it has, turned into a writing career, which I actually enjoy telling little, tidbits of my life. And, my book is, fiction wrapped in truth. It really is my life. I just had to fictionalize it. Like I said, I didn't want folks coming at me like, you got me in the book. But, if people are a part of your life, for a season or for the long term, of course, they're going to be, mentioned in your book if you're writing about yourself, because they were a part of your life at some point or another. Like my old college roommates from the University of Georgia, we were back and forth a few days ago because it was one of our birthdays. And one of my roomies was like, I was telling about a part in the book. And she was like, oh, all I can remember was like, please don't call my daddy. Please don't call my daddy. Because we were laughing about something that happened in college where campus police was involved. So it's a good part. There's some funny parts in there. And so that's why I'm like, share your story. There are funny parts, about college, about growing up, about just things that have happened. So it's good to share it. I have friends who will call me or text me. It's like, oh my gosh, a friend is reading the book to her mom, and she'll text me, say, oh, me and my mom were laughing about, this part when you guys were moving somewhere, or about what happened in college. So, it's good to, let people know different aspects of your personality. So, everything is not always serious or, burdensome, there are some lighthearted, parts that you can share. I'm writing the second part of my story. And so I'm writing little stuff down. I'm telling my college roommates, I'm like, oh gosh, we got to tell about this time, we had this little code word for something. And they're like, oh my gosh. And so we're, still laughing, this is something that happened like 30 years ago. And so it's good to reminisce about, funny things from your childhood. I'm just writing little pieces down so I'll remember to incorporate into the second book. And so, start doing that, Jackie. I encourage you, stuff that happened from childhood. We were talking a few days ago how you had to pick your own switch, when you were getting ready to get a whooping. If you're from those days, you had to go in the bushes and get your own switch. And that was like torture for us, because if you pick, a wimpy switch and your, grandparents or your parents had to go in them bushes and get it, it was not going to be good. So we even were talking about that a few days ago, me and some friends. So, these are just things that happen in childhood, depending on when you grew up.
Yep, that's right. Oh boy, yes, I do remember that. I mean, fortunately, I didn't get a lot of spankings, but I was good. I was a good kid.
Well, I'm glad you were, because some of us got tore out the frame with, just your siblings you're with. I had one sibling, she kept us in trouble. And so, I grew up where it was like the community beating, if one got it, everybody got it. And like I said, I had a sister that kept us getting, beatings. We had to go into, bushes and get our own switch, or we would meet the, what we call it, the gauntlet, at the front door, my grandparents and my mom standing there, with the belt or the switch. So I'm glad somebody was good, because if in my house, nah, we kept it.
Because see,
Yes.
I was the oldest.
Okay.
I was the oldest sibling, and I have two brothers, and they're both like, it's like 6.5 years between me and my oldest brother. Yeah. So yeah. So I didn't have a lot of that. I was pretty, all my father had to do was look at me. You know what I mean? All I had to do was get the look, that. And then I knew I had to kind of simmer down. I had done all I could do. All right, you done performed up to now, but when I give you that look, you know what that means. So.
Oh, you're like my daughter. I said my husband would give her the look, and her big eyes would just start to water. I'm like, really?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I understand. Yeah, that component, that look from your dad. Yes.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? I'll say this, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And it's like, I remember being younger, and it really hurt when you disappointed your parents, and they were disappointed in you.
Yes.
Which is something that some of the children nowadays don't really. I don't want to blanket statement say all, but it's not the same. Like I just remember it would hurt me for my dad and my mom to be disappointed in me. For them to even just say, you know what, I taught you better than that. That was just the waterworks. That just for even, they didn't even have to touch me just to say I'm very disappointed in you. That was like, like, okay.
Yes, yes. It's like the dagger. Yes.
Right. Remove it from my chest, So yeah. So I didn't have I understand about the going and getting the switch, but I didn't have a lot of switch moments. Thank God.
Well, I think it actually helped us, even though you may have not been the cause of getting the, community spanking, but it shaped you like, okay, well, I know I'm not going to do this. Or, okay, doing this gives you this, consequence, this action causes this reaction. And again, I think for our generation, there is a shift in values that we learned versus what, some of the children are learning today. And again, our parents, all they had to say was, I'm very disappointed in you. I didn't raise you to be like this. I raised you better than that. And it would just like crush us. And so some of those same values, some of those same lessons aren't necessarily being taught today. And so children aren't really taking in that, some of the things that the parents are trying to instill in them. These are values. These are morals to help you be a better person, a more productive citizen, you know, a good ambassador to the earth. And so that may be an element that's missing.
To say the least. You know, how you have the one daughter?
Yes, I have one daughter.
Okay, so I have one son. I started late, and he's 11 now. So it's really a huge, you know, generational gap, if you will. So that's the only way I kind of know about some of the things that go on now. You know, just listening to him talk, and you know, I'm just thinking to myself, like, I don't know where do you get these kids from nowadays? I don't even know what to say. But
Oh
that's a
no.
whole another conversation.
Oh yeah. My grandson's 9, and some of the stuff he says, I'm like,
Right,
really?
you just look that, and that's all you can do is just you spit
Yes,
everything
I
around.
just, yeah, I give that look like, really? You know, that would be unheard of in our generation. We laugh about, you know, we wouldn't even think certain thoughts because we figure our parents could read our minds and they would just kill us on the spot. You know, I never thought about talking back to my parents. I never even thought in my mind to, you know, even mumble something in my mind because I knew they could read it and I would just be struck dead. But the things that, you know, the children, you know, say, and I'm just like, you know, it never crossed
Right.
my mind. And my parents are still living, and we laugh about that stuff. It's like, did you hear what, you know, that child said to their parent? You know, we'll be in the store. We'll be like, oh no, we never thought of that. And so it's amazing with, you know, the different generations. My daughter is 33, and she'll be like, Ma, oh, I never would. I said, I know. It never would have crossed your mind. And so it's a big difference now.
It is. It's so funny to hear you say. That's why I had to chuckle when you said you feel like they would read our minds and then we'd be killed on the spot.
You know, because our parents would say,
mumbling it, right?
yeah, they would say, remember, I brought you into this world. I can take you
Take
out.
you out. Yep.
You know, I never would have thought of that stuff. You know, these are things that resonate with, you know,
Yep.
now we can laugh about it, but we were so, you know, it was so ingrained in us and it was so serious because they said it with that tone that you knew they weren't playing. Something else, I'll tell a little bit about my chapter that I put in the book. Remember, you got the lecture before you went to the store. My mom would tell us, don't look at nothing, don't touch nothing, don't ask for nothing because you ain't getting nothing.
Right.
I put that in my chapter, and you know, because that was what we were told before you went in the store. You better not look at nothing, you better not touch nothing, you better not ask for nothing because you ain't getting nothing. So if you did all those 3 things, we would get those big pixie sticks. I don't know if you remember those big. That was our, you know, treat for being good in the store. But that was a lecture we got every time before we would go into the 5 and 10. You know, before we went into Sears, J.C. Penney's, the BX. We got that.
It didn't matter.
So that was something, you know, you learn. You better not, don't look at that. Don't ask for it. You better not touch it. So that was something I put in my book. That was a funny thing that we grew up. And I actually asked my mom for something in my chapter. And, you know, that was her response. So that's a tidbit that I put in my chapter about, you know, what we did. And I broke that rule. And that was my mom's response.
Yeah, that's nice. So that how you put those little tidbits in there that people, you know, that are very relatable that we can all chuckle to, you know, a little bit, because I remember that. And I just remember thinking, like, when my father would say that, I brought you in this world, I'd take you out. And I just remember thinking, oh, my mother used to always say to me, what was it that she used to say? She used to say a couple of things. She would say, birds of a feather flock together.
Yes.
She would say, whatever is done in the dark will come to the light. And I remember thinking, like, Mom, what are you saying? Like, where you getting this stuff from? You know, kind of like I thought at the time, one ear and out the other. And now I find myself getting ready to say it to my son. To say to myself, like, wow. You know, I had told myself.
I turned it to my parents.
Right, exactly. I don't want to turn into my parents, but, you know, and really all of those little sayings probably come from, like, you know, slaves, which was probably brought over from the continent, you know, and it was some sort of a proverb, but by the time it got here, it just kind of carried on, you know what I mean? But you understand the overall context of it, you know, and because a lot of times people say stuff, they don't even know where they got it from. They just know their mother said it, and the mother knows that their mother said it, and the mother know, you know what I mean, just passed down. But it all makes sense.
But yes, as Gern say, but it makes sense. Like you're saying, the birds of a feather flock together. If you were at the same group and this group was doing, you know, you couldn't see it because you're in the group, but your parents like birds of a feather. And then looking back, I look back on certain, I'm like, oh wow, you know, that little group I was in wasn't a good group. You know, they ended up taking some troubled paths, or what you do in the dark is like, oh, somebody was doing something a little sneaky, but you know, it brought to the light. Everybody saw what they were doing. It was exposed, you know, a not so good deed or something. And so, like you said, it didn't make sense. But as you got older, it did, because you saw it, you know, come to the light. You saw, you know, those birds flying that same direction, which may have not been a good direction.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Well, this has been so much fun. I mean, I really, really enjoyed talking to you. I always meet some interesting people, and you're definitely one of them, and very, very easy to talk to. So I hope we, you know, at some point connect again, and I will definitely help you all celebrate or be, you know, on the sidelines, you know, with the little flag or whatever you want to call it, cheering you all on. So, and I'm really excited about it. So let's go ahead and close out. What do you want to leave the audience with?
Thank you again so much, Jackie, for having me on your show. This has been amazing. I enjoyed speaking with you as well. We can relate to so many things from life. And I want to leave with the viewers that you are undefeated. No matter what circumstances you find yourself in, what, you know, life situation you're encountering, that you can be undefeated. You have to, you know, look up to the hills to where your help comes from. In my case, it's God. And that, you know, you can defeat any obstacle. Doesn't matter what it is. It may be small to you or seem large to you, but it is so small into comparison to the God that I serve. So you are undefeated.
That's right. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you all for joining us. And those of you that have joined live, excuse me, if you are interested in learning more about the book project, I believe it's undefeatedwomen.com. And then Miss Hemingway's, this is her website here. Again, I'm your host, 𝐏𝐸 Harrison. And I'm sorry, everybody, my mouth gets so dry. That's one of my after effects of having COVID. It's like every time I talk, it's like I get cotton mouth. So forgive me. But again, please make sure you follow me on or at Realizing Your Potential, the numbers 123. That's on Facebook, as well as on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn under 𝐏𝐸 Harrison. And what else? My website is Realizing Your Potential, the numbers 123.com. Definitely reach out to me if you would like to be a guest on the show. And or if you have an upcoming anthology, I would love to feature you as well as your co-authors. Or if you have a book, you know, you authored a book solo and you are interested in promoting that book, reach out to me as well. If you're interested in having your own TV show on a streaming platform, the Women Win Network, that is streams on Roku as well as Amazon Fire TV. If that's something that you were doing, that's one of your goals for 2023, reach out to me and let me know. Let's talk. So thanks again for joining us for the show, and for those that will catch the replay. And I will talk to you all again actually tomorrow. I have 2 guests coming up tomorrow. So definitely make sure you following me so you can know, so you can be able to join us. All right, at 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. All right, take care, everyone. Talk to you all again soon.